This podcast was sponsored by Notion Refinery, graphic design for hire. Go to notionrefinery.com or email at contact@notionrefinery.com. This information can be found in the description below. This podcast is sponsored by my patron sponsors. I'd like to give a quick shout out to Crush Gaming, Chad, Stuart, and McJiggles. Thank you guys for becoming podcast sponsors. And then not only becoming podcast sponsors, continuing to do that month after month. I do appreciate it. Just like I appreciate all of you guys on Patreon for supporting this that I call my job. What I can call my job. Thank you so much for supporting my endeavors so much. And if you would like to support or become a podcast sponsor, consider becoming a patron today. Thank you. First off, welcome guys. Let's go ahead and do introductions for those that don't know. Let's start with Nene. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Nathan, or Nene. I'm the team lead and the lead artist for the Living Legends team.
Okay. And Nico, what about yourself?
You might know me as Lico. I used to be a community manager for Mechwarrior Living Legends.
Okay.
And for Living Legends 2, I am in charge of the project, the lead producer, if you will. And I also serve a sort of role as a game director.
Okay, cool. And I just called you Nico instead of Lico. Yeah, that's a good start. All right. I'm actually pretty excited. To put it in context, I don't know if you guys know this. I know some people out there may know this. I was actually part of the Living Legends team way back. I actually did the Stormcrow. And how I got into that was through Living Legends. I was playing the hell out of the game. That's actually how I met Darren. He tells the story a little bit differently, but he was lost out there in the wilderness, and I found him on a battlefield, and I recruited him. And then, long story short, but that's actually how I got to know Darren. And this came at a weird time where we hadn't had a game for, this was 2009. I don't know, 2009, 2010 timeframe. Even something like that. And so we hadn't had a game in 8, almost 10 years. And then I started getting into asking questions on actually, it wasn't even Discord. It was TeamSpeak back in the day. And then I started doing the modeling, and then I got involved. And when you guys dropped on this past holiday that you guys were doing Living Legends 2, I wanted to sit down immediately and have a chat because Nene, me and you had touched base a few times before, but we really couldn't just schedules. But you guys have officially announced, and you made an announcement that sort of caught me by surprise. So we're going to go ahead and dive into that. And so for those that don't know, Living Legends 2, you guys had talked about doing Living Legends 2 for a while. You were working. Actually, how about you just tell me about the little bit of history? That way they can hear from your perspective. You guys were using Mechwarrior 5. And when did development of Living Legends 2 start as far as Mechwarrior 5 was concerned?
So, Lico, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Sure, I can go ahead on this one. So,
Okay.
Mechwarrior Living Legends restarted development in, I believe, 2015 with the Community Edition, which took over where Wandering Samurai left off because the community had been keeping the game alive even after development had died down, and eventually they got a hold of the source code. And when Mechwarrior 5 came around, there were quite a number of developers who expressed some interest in maybe working on some kind of mod to bring Combined Arms gameplay to Mechwarrior 5. We had heard that PGI was going to be making updates to make the game more moddable and things like that, so we started to investigate that. And that's basically what the project grew out of. For almost 2 years, we basically had one guy, this wonderful Finnish guy who goes by Bolter, slaving away more or less in secret on a mod project for Mechwarrior 5. And we broke the news to the public properly when we reached a point in development where we were like, this is kind of becoming like a real game all of a sudden, and we need to see whether or not we can actually have enough clients connect to a game server to have the kind of gameplay we want. The only way to do that is to put out a call for playtesters. So we decided to show our project to the world. And so that's probably where you picked up our story to begin with there. And so how we got to where we are currently, well, at first there was a massive rush of interest and volunteers, people wanting to get involved. And as we put that new team together, we quickly realized that in order to realize the ambitions for our project that we had in mind, we would basically need to rewrite everything that was already built for us in Mechwarrior 5, because we don't have access to the source code for Mechwarrior 5. Basically, we're only able to slap things on top of it crudely using something called Unreal Blueprints, which is sort of like a pseudocode language that you can use to quickly iterate gameplay if you're trying to prototype things, but it's not good for building an entire game off of.
Sure.
So we basically reached a point where we had to start over using our own standalone code. And at that point, it didn't really make much sense to continue supporting our Mechwarrior 5 mod, especially with the way it had recently been broken by an update. And we assessed the amount of work it would require for us to continue maintaining that, and it would basically be preventing us from moving on with the standalone code. So that's where we are today. We're totally focused on making our own project that will be an independent release under Microsoft's game content usage rules.
Okay. Okay, a lot to package there. Did you guys? Yeah. Did you? What kind of relationship, or have you had a relationship? Have you reached out and talked to, prior to making this decision? Did you talk to Piranha Games about these issues, these concerns, as far as the modding? Because just like everybody else, our Mechmanor mod, we were waiting for the DLC as well, because we'd already talked about developing on top of stuff, and we figured, why reinvent the wheel? Obviously, we had to wait a lot longer, 18 months, but it finally came out. When it came out, the editor was completely broke. No one could use it, and it wasn't until recently fixed. But what is your relationship with Piranha Games as far as in this? Can you go back in the history? Did you have any with them?
That would be a Nene question.
Okay.
Yeah. So since the beginning, actually, before we even started the Living Legends project, I hadn't even known Liko was putting together a team at the time. Essentially, I was sort of feeling the growing pains of Living Legends myself, because,
Sure.
with as you know, since you've created assets for Living Legends, you're really restricted by the CryEngine in terms of what you can do with it. So out of frustration, I basically reached out to a few of the team leads for the original Living Legends project, saying, hey, Unreal is pretty popular, and I hear Mechwarrior 5 is doing mods, so why don't we move our new game over to that? And they were like, no, I don't know if that'll be good. I don't feel like we should stir the pot a little. And I'm always the kind of person who likes to take initiative. And like, if I want something done, I'm going to get it done. So I reached out to Piranha Games directly. And, I got originally an email response from a representative. And they moved it directly up to Russ Bullock himself, who essentially I was asking sort of the requirements for this project, the legality of it, and like what we would have to do to make sure we didn't have another, issue with Piranha Games. Essentially, after that is when we released the alpha and it got the game going. However, when they released the update that broke the mod, and we decided that it wouldn't be worth the amount of time and effort to try and repair everything, I reached out to Microsoft directly, and I got I think he was the vice president of the games division for like the Xbox games division. He reached out to me, and with his legal team told me that as long as we follow their game usage content rules, we're allowed to go standalone and do what we see fit with the game.
Okay. And do you have a name with that? No, I mean, just for
I can
transparency's sake?
I can pull it up.
Okay. There's been a lot of questions, and obviously we'll dive into some of those. So it's just one of those things where I think if it's all out there for everyone, because the first thing that popped up into mind is like obviously the legal. You brought that up. You guys want to be in the clear. You don't want to stir the pot. Obviously, you got Mech 5 out there. I know they were super excited for you guys doing the mod. That's why I was wondering, is like, was there no further communication of saying like, hey, hey, this sort of patch and these breaking, we're doing some serious stuff here, and we, it's gonna super hamper us. I didn't know if there was any talks after that of like, hey, can we make this work? We want it to stick together.
Yeah, it was Fabian Lane who I reached out to from
Okay.
Microsoft. But with regards to after the mod broke, we didn't really message Piranha Games with regards to moving standalone. I tried reaching out to a couple of people from Piranha Games, but I never really got any responses, and I didn't want to be annoying or bother them. I imagine they're really busy, so I just didn't want to inconvenience them in any way.
So is other than just to be clear, you're basically saying is you reached out a little bit, but was your guys' minds already made up? Is that why you're saying you didn't really pursue it?
Uh, I wouldn't necessarily say made up. We had a lot of discussion regarding this. It was more or less 50-50. I'll let Liko sort of explain the rest because
Yeah, I can weigh in here. So the thing is, we had sort of a number of contingency plans for different scenarios because we didn't want to, like Nene said, we didn't want to step on any toes. There had been some conflict in the past between, the Wandering Samurai developers and Mechwarrior Online, and we don't want anything to do with that. That's, over a decade in the past at this point. So, we were trying to tread very carefully when it comes to all that stuff. Um, and it became clear to us well before that point that in order to accomplish our design goals, we would basically be throwing out all of MechWarrior 5 in its base gameplay systems for the behavior of mechs and heat, ammo, movement, like all that stuff would have to be remade from the ground up anyway. So it was a very easy decision for us to make, and basically like we can either try to make this work, try to slap blueprints on top of it to do what we want, or we can just build something that works the way we want it to and not worry about someone else breaking it with updates.
Sure. Yeah, and that's super frustrating. Like super frustrating, especially if you have an entire team doing it. And I mean, yeah, and there's nothing you can do. And of course, it's all like I look at it more of being you have to be retroactive, and no one likes to be retroactive. You like to be proactive, like and so like I get that. So obviously you gave us that name, Nene, and I'll look into that myself. And I just know that I've had some questions, and it's always good to just be clear as far as out there. So Microsoft basically said, hey, we have. It's funny, they used to actually have this a little bit more accessible because of Mechmanor 2 source code back in the day, this the open games thing, but then also the Mech Assault project is also using, I think, something similar to this, right? So
Yeah,
um,
it's actually the same legal framework that Wolves uses, like you mentioned, the Mech Assault Spiritual Successor Project, which we're good friends with the Wolves people.
yeah,
Pajama Boy is
I
someone
love it.
you know
Yeah.
he's worked on MechWarrior Living Legends Community Edition. He's part of the community, and I love that guy. He was someone that we sought advice for, and Microsoft actually has a very permissive fan game policy when it comes to this stuff. There are plenty of other examples of independent games that are published under the same framework. Like the one that Nene brought to my attention originally was a Halo fan game called Installation 01.
Okay. So what are you from your understanding? Sorry for the cough too for everybody listening. Again, I'm getting over it. What are you able to do with that? I guess a fan modding license. What are you able to do, and what are you not able to do?
So if it helps out at all, I can send you the email thread as well. But just to reiterate, what they're doing is we can't use the MechWarrior name. So we dropped MechWarrior from it entirely. If you saw from like all the social media and the Discord page, so it's just Living Legends 2 now. We also cannot make a product that competes with any of the other Microsoft products. So we cannot directly ask for money to play the game, and we also cannot paywall or gatekeep or content lock any of our content. So one of the things that we did ask about was, say, things like Patreon. We are allowed to use Patreon. However, in no way can Patreon be a requirement for any of the content that goes in the game.
Okay.
Basically, what Microsoft cares about is that we're not even giving the appearance of selling a commercial and officially licensed product, which is why we can't use the Mechwarrior name, because that may give that impression that it's an official Microsoft product when it's not. And two, that we're not actually directly making any money off of Microsoft owned content. So basically, from their perspective, we are using their content by using Mechwarrior things, as long as we're not representing ourselves like we're an official commercial product, that's totally fine with them. We're not selling any content, we're not selling a game. All we're doing is trying to make the best game that we possibly can, give it to people who will enjoy it.
Okay. And did you have any restrictions per the platform you could release that on, or the engine
No,
or anything?
there's no restrictions or anything like that. If in fact, Fabian actually gave me a link and a contact info for us to get a hold of dev kits for the new Xbox. So we're a long ways away from thinking about anything like that, but it is an option we do have available if we so choose.
Okay. Obviously, my concerns, I'll just broadcast them as my concerns is not Piranha Games. It's actually my concerns would be EG7, because that's actually who you're dealing with now, as far as the licensee holder, not the owner, but the licensee holder. So that's like my concerns. That's why I wanted to bring up from the legal standpoint. And of course, Microsoft. But, if you've got a basically thumbs up from Microsoft, and also too is like, I think it, like I said, I think it sort of sucks, if I'm honest, because I think it would have been really good for it to be on Mech 5, because you could have also now tapped into the Xbox, right? You could tap into that crowd, but they don't even get mods, so it doesn't matter anyways, right? So it's not like that would have really accounted for anything.
Yeah, it was the only issue with keeping it as a mod is like the dedicated servers, especially we would have to build something like that from the ground up, and unfortunately with the framework that the MechWarrior 5 editor works with, it would be impossible for us to do it using their editor. We had to go standalone if we wanted to keep dedicated servers.
Yeah. Let's go to pause here for a second. Liko, I'm getting feedback from you. Do you hear that, Nene?
Yeah, I
It's like
hear it.
broadcasting. I don't know if that's your TV or.
I tried unplugging and replugging my headphones. Did that fix it?
Try enabling noise suppression. Do you have that enabled? It's at the bottom left of your Discord. It looks like these little line things right above where it says screen.
Yes, I do have it enabled.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's try. Let's see if that works.
What type of
No,
feedback are you
it just
getting?
happened. It almost looks like it sounded like it was hearing us. That's what it sounded like. Just all right. So, dedicated server. We'll get into that. So I just wanted to cover that. Those were my concerns that popped off, was because Piranha Games had an issue back in the day with Living Legends, and I specifically remember talking about that back then, which was it was actually cool up until Living Legends, I remember specifically, started introducing stuff like the dual reticle system, and it was basically something that MWO had, and then there was a few other features, and obviously the dealings behind the scenes, we don't know every single detail, and I don't think we ever will, but obviously the development stalled with that until the second team took over, and you said 2015.
Right.
So cool. I mean, obviously this, I feel like it sucks because on one hand, the lack of communication, I guess, from like, it sucks that like Piranha Games didn't even reach out to you like, hey guys, we really want to keep you. Like, what can we do? Like, I understand like they're not going to give out the source code, but like whoever's in charge, I don't know who's in charge for Mech 5 necessarily as far as modding and stuff like that. And especially if like keeping something like this in-house would have been really freaking cool. And giving you guys more freedom. And I'm obviously, I get what you're saying is you're having to develop new systems because like you want different animations, you want a different heat system, you want different hard points or weapon, whatever. I mean, the whole works. But if you'd have had the freedom to be able to do that in a better relationship with, PGI, I feel like that there had to have been something. But if they didn't even reach out to you, or if there wasn't really an open dialogue back and forth, then well, you had to go this route.
Yeah, we unfortunately, I mean, like, I would have liked to had the ability of keeping the mod at least a little bit longer, just because right now, for while we're gearing up for the next alpha build, we're having to use some placeholder assets. For example, we're using some of the mechs from Wolves at the moment until the art team can go through and finish up getting our assets out the door.
Yeah. Okay, so for someone who's sitting out there, they may not even actually know what Living Legends is. And so I've never actually streamed it. So can you guys go ahead and give it a breakdown? You sort of did a little bit, Liko, at the very beginning, but like, what is Living Legends, and what would make, and why would it make someone who's a BattleTech Mechwarrior fan excited?
We're gonna have to cut this. I forgot all about the combined arms.
No, it's all right. No, it's all right. Yeah, it's combined
This
arms.
is what editing is for. Okay, let me start this over.
Totally leaving this in.
This is good. This is good.
It's good content right here.
Okay. Mechwarrior Living Legends is a multiplayer mech game about combined arms tactical action in the 31st century. Mechwarrior Living Legends provides a tactical sandbox where you can express your playstyle any way you want, with mechs, tanks, battle armor infantry, and even aerospace fighters. It provides all those options for you. And we strive to make almost all of them balanced and competitively viable. And we are focused on providing varied and exciting multiplayer experiences.
Okay. And what does this look like in an everyday Joe? Like I said, if someone has never, like, do you just load up? Or are you in a mech? Or are you in a mech lab? Like, what is it? Do you have,
So when you play Mechwarrior Living Legends, it's a little bit old school. There's a dedicated server browser. There's no matchmaking. You just hop right in. You spawn in. You have a buy menu where you can see a large catalog of units. And over the course of an hour-long match, you advance into bigger and better pieces of technology. You'll start the game in light mechs that have more primitive weapons, and you'll end the game in assault mechs and assault tanks, all sorts of other things. And you will fight with up to 13 comrades in a 14 versus 14 battlefield, fighting over terrain and various types of objectives, like factories that help you build units, and bases that help you repair, and things like that.
Okay. I've talked a lot about Living Legends actually recently, in regards to the game mode, and how I've always felt that a group faction play mode in MWO would have actually been perfect for it. And I hope they actually still do it, or if they're, because they've talked about it potentially, or something along those lines. But I've always felt it's super fun and engaging. Obviously, there's some technical limitations. They don't have repair bays. I think that's really the only thing per se. And then, man, I loved playing it back in the day. I thought it was a completely different experience. Obviously, you get in balancing mechanisms like with battle armor or VTOLs, especially, funny enough, Alex Iglesias, the artist, known for all the new updates or artwork, he used to be in a freaking VTOL, but he'd be like right at that one click mark, and they would like twitch out, so like you couldn't hit them even though you'd be aiming up. It was super frustrating. Alex, you know who you are. But that sounds awesome. So you mentioned 14 versus 14. I guess another question: are you guys using Unreal 4, or are you using what are you guys doing?
We are using Unreal 5 for the development. So that entails all the new bells and whistles that come with Unreal 5. Nanite, for example, is one of their biggest selling points. And I've already gone through and done quite a few extensive tests with Nanite.
What is
that? So it's a little hard to explain because I'm not an engineer in this sense, but the way it works is, you know how the original Doom, where the way they laid out their maps and their level geometry was they took bits and pieces of the levels, laid it out flat, and used sort of like a voxel system for it to show you it in the three-dimensional space. It works kind of like that, but per pixel, whereas it takes each and individual geometry for different meshes, different assets, and it adjusts its LOD based off of what you're seeing, and it allows you to get objects like, for instance, the Atlas that we have that we're going to test with the alpha build has over 5.4 million polygons,
Which
and
is
it
like
runs.
that's a high
It's
poly
a
model.
lot.
Yeah,
You
that's a
try
high poly.
dropping that in Unreal 4 and you'll crash the editor almost immediately. But in Unreal 5, I could take 100 of those things and I can run a game purely at 60 frames, no stutters, no drops, no nothing. There are, of course, some limitations to it because it's very new
Sure.
tech. It doesn't work with skeletal meshes, so you kind of have to finagle it a bit. And it also doesn't play very well with geometry that is sort of at level with the camera view. It kind of freaks out a little bit trying to determine what the camera can and can't see. But overall, it's a really impressive tech, and it could help shorten our pipeline for the art flow because with all the assets that we've worked with so far, it was the standard flow. Work with high poly model, then retopologize it, bake it down to a normal map, then UV unwrap everything, then texture everything, and it just takes forever to get an asset done. So we're hoping this will give us better looking assets and also faster assets rather than the whole pipeline. Another tech that I'm personally really excited for is Lumen. This is their answer for having a ray tracing style engine in without needing a ray tracing card. I'm running a 1080 Ti still because who can buy
Sure.
graphics cards these days?
Yeah.
And it allows you to get a lot of different features. Like, for instance, emissions now have global illumination, and they also emit their own light fields. Whereas previously you had to add your own physical lights in order for it to work and stuff like that. But it just looks good. It
Sure.
looks really good.
So optimization, and then obviously just the aesthetic, being able to bring something to life, and environments and
Yeah.
lighting effects and all that.
And the cool thing is we get all the tools that Unreal Engine 4 has as well. So
Were you guys already familiar with that? Like, of course, because of no.
We're playing with this for the first time.
No, I'm saying you already had you knew Unreal because of Mech 5, right? As far as that. So
Yeah.
if you have the same tools, that probably helps speed up the process.
It helps a little. I mean, we're all still really new to Unreal in general. Most of us are really experienced with the CryEngine, or in my case, I never even touched the engine even once while making assets for the game. In this case, it's a whole new learning curve, a whole new ball field. So it's going to take us time to really get to that level.
In layman's terms, there's a lot of new technologies for Unreal Engine 5, like Nanite and Lumen that Nene mentioned, that will basically allow us to push the boundaries of the fidelity of graphics that we can have without sacrificing performance and accessibility for people with lower end hardware. At least that's our hope.
Gotcha. This sounds all really cool. What you're doing Unreal 5, you all are new. You make this post saying, "Hey, we're going independent," and all. Okay. What kind of time frame are you looking at? Because like, if you're having to create, the cool thing is you can add assets as you go along. So you only need a handful, right? You'll need a tank, probably each weight class or type of walk or whatever. What kind of time frame are you guys looking at? A year? 4 years? 5 years? Like what do you, to get something where I can play it, I can stream it, we can kick ass in it? I mean, what are dreaming?
We're hoping to have a release similar to our previous, which was more of a pre-alpha tech demo, I would say, sometime this year. That's the best I can really say at this point in time. As to a more of a beta release with most of the features that we would like and a small amount of polish, when it's done, maybe sometime more like next spring, summer. It's really too early for us to say. And with these, the nature of the project being all volunteer labor, sometimes that can make it a little challenging for us to plan milestones like that. But next release, sometime this year, hopefully.
Okay. we spoke about mechs and vehicles, and what are you going to play? What are you going to be able to? Are you going to stick to the mechs, tanks, battle armor, aerospace, VTOLs? Because did you have a video of someone flying around in a helicopter that I
Yeah,
saw?
we did. That was it was interesting to say the least. Most of the systems for the aerospace and especially VTOL were very much placeholders at the time. And I hate to say it, but like the aerospace, when you get used to it, it just kind of worked. But it's very much like a lot of jank and nowhere near completion.
Yep, we're planning to have all the same unit types as in the first game, and in the case of battle armor and VTOLs in particular, we didn't get much of a chance to flesh those out as much as either the original designers imagined or as much as we would have liked on the community edition team. So we're really hoping to expand upon the gameplay in those areas.
Cool. Let's talk about aesthetics. You can't use any designs from MWO, or that would also be BattleTech or Catalyst or anything. You have to make your own, sort of like Wolves is doing. Do you have an artist that you guys are working with that's keeping a consistent sort of look? Do you already have in mind of what you guys are going for? Before we started, you guys were talking about some different concepts of maybe an atlas. What are we talking about?
So for a lot of sorry, Lico, do you want to say it?
I was just gonna say, so our unofficial art director is Anthony Scroggins. We don't talk to him, but we look at his art and we love it a lot. We all really appreciate how it's a fusion of these sort of newer 21st
Sure.
century style of art that the wonderful Alex Iglesias brought to us. But a fusion of that art style with more inspiration from the original technical readout line art. It's kind of a happy medium there.
Yeah.
And so that's the style that we're going for. But as to the actual process of the whole art pipeline, well, that's Nene's wheelhouse.
Yeah, we actually have quite a number of concept artists now, thanks to the influx of volunteers. And we've right now we're still sort of trying to spread our wings a little bit and figure out what does and doesn't work in terms of our art style. We're trying to differentiate more between Innersphere and Clan assets. I love the art style of Mechwarrior Online, but a lot of the mechs, I feel like they're sort of made from the same factory.
They're cookie cutter.
Yeah,
they
it's
are.
understandable because they have a single concept artist doing all of the mechs, more or less. And we're trying to spread out the ideas for different assets because everybody's going to think about how to skin a cat their own way.
Sure.
And I feel like that's the best way for us to differentiate things. For the Innersphere, especially, we were thinking of doing a sort of you've seen the Aliens movies, right? That sort of 80s style cassette hardware kind of thing. Everything looks like it's a old monitors. Everything runs off of diskettes and stuff like that. We were thinking of sort of going that direction for the Innersphere, and then with the clans, more of the technologically advanced. Everything looks clean, everything's smooth, and it just
Apple
works.
Apple
Yeah,
versus,
Apple
yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah. I gotcha. Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Again, I talk about this all the time when I'm streaming. Is the aesthetics? There are some PGI designs, especially the clan ones, that are very alien compared to others, like the Vapor Eagle, the Arctic Cheetah. You get into some ones where you're like, that doesn't fit the very square angular look that all the designs were, and they're awesome. But then you look at what Catalyst did, and Anthony Scroggins is great, and he obviously they had to, because I've talked to him, they had to distinguish their versions from the Piranha Games because legality as well, but it's more his style too, which is a little bit more organic. The Black Knight, I mean, again, where you got round shapes instead of just square, and angles and stuff like that. So that's cool. I mean, obviously, I look forward to seeing some concept and Well, by the way, you guys do have a public Discord, and people can join that. We'll have a link down below in the description, or if you're listening to this audio, we'll have it in the description so people can join that as well, and or any other information that we talk about, we'll have for you guys. But so okay, cool. I was curious about that because aesthetics is a big thing because that was one of my nitpicks I had back in Living Legends was we didn't have a director at all. So that's why you had assets that some looked freaking awesome, and then some looked like just garbage. And it was like a conflicting different, like not even like art styles, but like quality, like a big quality difference too. And that was always shocking to me. And
some of them look like they're straight out of Mechwarrior 4, and others look like they're straight out of the technical readout.
Technical readouts, yeah.
It's a mishmash of styles going on.
Yeah. That's awesome. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say when I did the Marauder, I based it pretty heavily off of the Mechwarrior Online version, and it kind of shows.
Yeah. So we talked. You mentioned earlier there was so much you wanted to change, and it's interesting. And I wanted to poke you guys about this because when we get in the discussions of Mechwarrior games, you did trigger, by the way, a lot of people. And let's just go ahead and get this out of the way because I already know there's no Mech Lab. And you guys have made that very clear. And literally, and I quote, I was excited. Now I don't give a shit about the game. That's what Reddit said, or at least some people that were like, it's Mech Lab. Let's go talk about that because I was actually, again, part of discussions back then where the team actually was designing a Mech Lab back then, and it was a completely different, had a sized hard point as well. But it gets really weird coming up with a design, and it's very complicated. And for some odd reason, us BattleTech nerds are so hard-coded in thinking needing a Mech Lab to realize if you just have a fucking good game, it doesn't matter. Like, that shouldn't matter. So why don't you have a Mech Lab, and why shouldn't it not matter to people playing or wanting to play this game in the future? Why does it matter?
See you, Lico.
Yeah. Well, so this is a very contentious topic. I knew we'd be talking about this. So there's a few big reasons. And this is also a complication here. Like you mentioned, the original devs were planning to introduce some kind of Mech Lab at some point. But I think just with the nature of the way the game was designed, the system for purchasing assets, and, it being a Crisis Wars mod, all those things kind of worked against it for ever implementing such a thing. And there's other issues like how can you synchronize people's customs between clients without people cheating on the build rules, that kind of stuff. But setting all that technical stuff aside now, because we are working on our own standalone code, right? So we can do whatever we want. Us in charge of the community edition have the clarity of having played this game for hundreds or thousands of hours for the last, over a decade. And the lack of a Mech Lab we have found has actually been Mechwarrior Living Legends' biggest saving grace. Because, as a very competitively minded player myself, when I look at the top level of play in Mechwarrior Online, tournament play, I look at tier lists of what are the best chassis and variants and how do you load them up with what equipment. I basically, the last time I checked in on it, although I understand this may not be the case anymore, is basically you either run all medium lasers, you run all clan ER medium lasers, or you run all clan pulse lasers on one of 6 different chassis. And there you go. That's the top level of play in Mechwarrior Online, because if you choose something else, you're memeing and you have to play that much harder to win, or you just don't care about winning more than you care about running a goofy custom build, which is fine, but that means you're not a competitively minded player in that way. And you'll be at an inherent disadvantage against people who are actively gaming the customization system in their favor. And we don't like that idea in terms of how it would apply to our game. And something that we've tried to do in the community edition is to go through every single variant of every single mech and vehicle and make sure that all of them actually have a role to fill. that they work as intended, and that they're competitively viable against other similar things that can be purchased at the same point in the game. And when you look at the top level of play in Mechwarrior Living Legends, the top players are using 70 or 80% of the entire unit catalog. Less so when it comes to aerospace fighters, which have a sort of narrower set of optimal conditions. But when it comes to mechs and tanks, there is hardly a single variant among the, I think, over 600 different variants in the game that you can point to and say, that's just bad, that's just useless. This loses in a 1v1 to X, Y, and Z, and it's just bad. And having no customization gives us that control in order to create a well-balanced ecosystem with a variety of interesting and meaningful choices for the player to make. Whereas the customization environment, if you want to be competitive, if you want to be the best of the best, because there's no restrictions whatsoever, the optimal conditions end up being very narrow, your medium lasers, essentially. So that's really the biggest issue for us.
Obviously, not just medium lasers anymore, but I get the analogy. So what you're saying is, excuse me, what you're saying is take the customization away, but what we're doing is we're giving you the options of multiple different variants that are going to fulfill your needs as far as in the gameplay, but also it keeps you in the game. Because I to put this in perspective, I think a lot of people don't understand, and this is Living Legends. I don't know about Living Legends 2, but I assume it's going to be similar. When you join a server, you're in you're physically, I don't know if you're going to have the same way. You start in a battle armor, or type person. You walk up to a console, you pull up the console, and you do your purchasing there, and boom, your mech spawns. You go and you get in your mech and you go off. That's basically what it is. So if what you're saying is does also a factor in of time in the match, like if you're just in the mech lab the entire damn time, you're not out there in the thing. So that doesn't really help your teammates that are out there trying to take, the forward operating base alpha, and you're over there piddling, worried about some, thing. Is that sort of like play a part in that?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the other thing, is that it doesn't really fit neatly in where part of the design philosophy of Mechwarrior Living Legends is that everything is contained in the match. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're never going to lose because the other person spent more time grinding to get a fancier mech, or spent more time min-maxing their variants in the mech lab. You know what I'm saying? Everything is directly a product of the actions that you take and the decisions that you make, the choices that you make in the battlefield.
Okay.
So yeah, there's definitely an element of that also, where like it doesn't quite fit in the gameplay loop neatly. And I could sort of see like maybe there could be an external mech lab and you go and fiddle around in there before you connect to a server and get in a match. But then you have a situation where like everybody comes in with like a completely different set of variants for everything, where we still need to make presets for all those things anyway and balance around those. Like it just doesn't really fit. And then there's a whole additional problem of, okay, do you have custom tanks? Yeah. Well, the build rules for tanks are less restrictive. You can have as much armor as you want. You can put as many guns as you want right on the turret, and they can't be shot off like.
But this goes into the point of balancing, and not a balance of what people are normally thinking. Balance in the form of an economy. So whatever variants you have, and they don't have to be canon at all, but I'm sure you will, because there was some back in the day, that Timberwolf Prime would have a different price than an Owens or a Bushwhacker or whatever. And so that when you spawn and you go out and you play, again, the whole thing, guys, is you're earning C-bills. So, I went and helped capture, Bravo, and then I got a kill or two or did something. Oh, crap. My mech's really beat up. Okay, I die. I'm going to respawn. Oh, now I can actually get into something a little bit bigger or something a little bit better. Or, you know what? Maybe we're running into a lot of light mechs that are capping. I need to also hop in something that's fast and, be able to counter that or fight that. I don't think if you've never played this game, you miss out on that. So I just feel like I just need to clarify, like that was a part of the strats, basically the meta game, if you will. where you're tugging and pulling, you're going over here, you're hitting this base. Crap, they just hit they took over the repair bay. We need to take that back, and or like,
Right.
If you've never played it, it can sort of be hard to wrap your head around it. So I
Yeah,
just wanted to
I sort of
clarify.
skipped over describing that the core gameplay elements when I was going over the high level stuff, about the combined arms and the tactical sandbox and all that. But basically, what you spend your time doing is you pick a unit, a mech or a vehicle or an aerospace fighter, whichever, and you leave your base and you go out into the map where there are objectives for you to capture, and you try to capture the enemy's territory and you defend your objectives from them. And each one of those objectives usually does something like there's a factory there where you can build mechs,
It's like a
respawn at
respawn.
that
Yeah,
location,
yeah.
or there's a place for your team to rearm and repair that will be closer to the battle than your main base. And controlling more territory reduces the enemy's team tickets, which is what you use to spawn. And when you run out of them, you're done.
Yeah.
Or sometimes the match will just go to time, and the team that has less team tickets loses.
Sure. Are you guys?
But it's basically the system from Battlefield.
Sure. I was actually going to reference, like, are you guys taking inspirations from other games? Because I feel like, again, us BattleTech nerds sometimes are so narrow-minded, but when I go and play other games, like, Jesus Christ, this would be so good in a BattleTech setting. I've been playing Battlefield 4. I'm waiting for 2042, and I'm playing this, and it's just chaos is going around me. You got tanks and LAVs and infantry fighting vehicles, and I got planes flying over, VTOL, everything, and I'm just like, this would be fantastic if we just and that's sort of what I almost akin to what you guys are making, which is that that experience is that bigger combat, combined arms, but also just it's a combat experience that we don't see even in Mech 5, even with the infantry. They're negligible. You don't really care. Tanks, you got VTOLs, but there's no aerospace fighters. You're lacking in the scope of things. BattleTech, the game, very lacking as far as that too. You only get mechs and tanks, except for the mods now. But are you guys taking inspiration from other games? And if so, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we're a lot of the games that we're wanting to try to mimic is like Battlefield, with especially with their big team battles, how you can have like servers with up to 64 players. Since we're no longer constrained by our or the tools we're using, we're hoping that we can viably get like in normal matches up to 32 players per match, and in larger matches up to 64 players. We've been dabbling with a lot of different ideas. Nothing's concrete or set in stone because it's way too early to tell. But one of the things we've been thinking about doing was a sort of like a pseudo campaign style mode, like how in Battlefield 1, where each team, as they progress through the objectives, the map will change.
Rush,
and the objectives.
sort of.
Rush.
Yeah, Rush. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing. We were hoping to mix that in with like Battlefront 2 space combat, or have like a space only map that to start out with, and then it'll combine into ground arms warfare. All of these were just ideas we've been throwing in the bucket, but nothing's concrete yet.
Yeah, obviously. So one very unique thing about MWO is its server side. Most first-person shooters are client side. Obviously, there's many issues with that, but I didn't know you guys were talking about server side. You're talking about numbers. Obviously, the new Battlefield, I think, is like 100+ people, which is gonna be one of the not first games to have that, but the first like first-person shooter outside of like Planet side, because Planet side is a different beast in itself too. But yeah, especially with the graphic fidelity of a Battlefield, now with those type of, it's pretty awesome. They have their own. I think they're a Frostbite, right? So
Yep, Frostbite.
yeah. Well, that's awesome. Have you guys considered infantry? Not in the like, especially with like with anti armor type weapons that are available out there and stuff like that. I didn't know if you had thought about that.
Well, we're definitely going to have battle armor infantry like in the first game. But when it comes to conventional infantry, we kind of have a balance problem there. It's a similar issue to whenever people suggest things like multi-crew vehicles or like two-seater mechs or things like that, where we would kind of have to buff up their effectiveness beyond all reasonability uh, in order to make it not inherently a disadvantage for someone to choose that
Sure.
instead of, say, a mech,
Sure.
where you're just going to be yelling at them like, "Why are you foot slogging? Get
Yeah.
in a mech. This
Yeah.
is Mechwarrior. You need to be, next to me, getting shot at with me, and not just dying." Like.
Yeah. Have you, in that regards,
Where,
then, have you thought
yeah,
about AI? Because you mentioned, you mentioned a MOBA. MOBA has creep, and creep can add
yes.
value, especially Titanfall, the original, the AI, and that interaction that you'd have and stuff like that. Have you guys considered something like that?
Yeah, so you asked about other types of games that we take inspiration from, and Battlefield and other large-scale multiplayer shooters like that are certainly a large source of inspiration. But those of us who have stuck around in the community have also observed that there's a lot of similarities between the game flow of Living Legends and the sort of game flow that you find in a MOBA, where you're sort of pushing against the other team's defenses throughout the course of a match, becoming more and more powerful, and basically, the game and your strategic decisions revolve around the risk and reward elements. So, the more of an advantage that you build up, the more that you stand to give away. Because blowing up a bigger mech gives you more money. So, upgrading into that assault mech, you go out too far, you can't escape a bad situation because you're slow now, and then you get ganked, and the enemy team has tons of money now. Um, so we definitely take some inspiration from MOBAs in terms of the overall design of the PvP risk reward elements. And so because there's already that sort of similarity there, we're tossing around some ideas about uh, things that people want to see in a BattleTech game that may not be viable for a player to actually control, like maybe a whole squad of conventional infantry or something, a vehicle that may not be the most advanced or competitively viable, like, for example, the classic Introtech Scorpion tank, something along those lines. Or, perhaps something that doesn't have weapons, like a Swiftwind or, a mobile HQ built vehicle. Don't really know what that would do, but, things like that is sort of where our head is at in terms of incorporating AI. And also just when it comes to some people want to practice, but not against human opponents, particularly because uh, playing against a very skilled player in one of these PvP focused games, be very difficult to learn that way without structured feedback. So bots would be very nice to have for that reason. So you can just load up a server by yourself or with some friends and populate it with bots, get the practice that you want, or just do a little comp stomp.
Awesome. Another question. What kind of experience is a player going to have? What are you guys envisioning for the Mech cockpit experience? Are you guys thinking third person, first person? And if you are thinking that, what are the are you taking more of akin to Living Legends, MWO? Or do you have any other types of imagination, perspectives, or just what are you guys bringing to the table that may be different, or is it not so different?
I'll just make a brief statement here and then turn it over to Nene so you can talk about art. But we're not going to have third person. I'm sorry to disappoint anybody that was hoping for that. And that's a gameplay thing, a balance thing. Basically, short version is imagine what it would be like to have battle armor activating the third person camera, peeking around the corner, and then reporting your entire team's positions and composition to the enemy. We don't really want to enable that sort of thing or create a. It's one of those things where if there is a choice that gives you a competitive advantage, there are many players that are going to be compelled to take it. And one of the few areas that we like to err on the side of sim-like, although I do think that's a false dichotomy over arcade-like, is to force that first-person perspective, and it has the added bonus of putting everybody on a level playing field. But when it comes to the aesthetics of the first-person cockpit experience, Nene definitely be excited to talk about that.
So for the first-person cockpit, we're definitely taking a decent amount of inspiration from Mechwarrior 5 and Mechwarrior Online models. We will definitely have a first-person cockpit. However, the way we're going to differentiate from that is diegetic displays in the cockpit itself. So each of our assets, and we already have the assets ready to go for this feature when we figure out actually how to do it. But each of the assets will have multifunction displays that'll show you your stats in the mech itself. And one of the design decisions we wanted to do was, for example, if your mech starts overheating in some ways, it messes with the displays. Another idea is like, certain weapons like PPC might also disrupt it and stuff like that. But we're wanting a little bit more interactivity with the mech itself. Because to me, at least, with Mechwarrior 5 and Mechwarrior Online, it's just a skin. Each mech does more towards like their sound design in Mechwarrior Online, because each mech has a different sound. You can clearly hear heavy, light, medium, and assault mechs, as well as just their general movement. But in terms of cockpit, it's kind of the same. They're laid out differently, but each cockpit doesn't really have a function. And I wanted to sort of give it that.
Okay. Now, obviously, are you gonna physically see the cockpit, or are you just gonna have more like just have a heads-up display?
You're gonna physically the most important stuff we will put on a heads-up display until we figure out how we want to put that in front of the player without being distracting or without being so far out of the way that it's no longer helpful. But we'll have it in front of the players that they can look off. We want to have it where a player could look around their cockpit and sort of see the different nooks and crannies inside of it. We're still sort of trying to figure out and flesh out the details and how we want to do each mech and each asset. Vehicles especially are probably going to be a bit of a design challenge, because in Living Legends the camera was always in the turret, but that's not at all where the pilot is. So we were thinking of doing a virtual style cockpit for tanks, where sort of like how Titanfall does their Titan UI, where you get in the vehicle and you have these displays that show what's in front of you and what's around you.
That's actually, I was about to bring that up. I've always felt that was very clever of them. And when I read the books, first off, we've always had a dumbed down version, in my opinion, compared to the books. What this experience is like. I mean, you're talking about very, very advanced technology, and it talks about, you get in the argument of like third person, first person, or whatever. But I always feel like being in a tank myself and seeing some of the tech that's coming out, they're doing some really cool stuff with VR. But what they did with Titanfall, I felt was very smart, which is you get in the mech, it's pretty much a solid shell around you, but then that has technology to display the outside world. And I always felt like that would have been really clever. So I don't know, again, that's one thing that I always felt was really cool. And they actually have a new thing for tanks or armored vehicles that, I don't know if you guys have seen this video, it's fucking nuts, which is they're wearing basically VR goggles, and they have cameras all around the vehicle, and the crewmen can see inside but also outside of the vehicle 360. It's fucking nuts. Wish we'd have had that in Iraq. But it's one of those things where, again, I didn't know if you were taking inspiration from other stuff. It looks like you're wanting the UI to be also part of the mech, as far as like instrument panels and stuff to be important, but you don't want it to be, so far away you can't even read like what that is as far as ammo count or whatever, like, or does it even matter? Would it just be easier just having it on a 2D plane in front of your face, stuff like that? So
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
another thing we can do now as well is, since we have Unreal and I also have a motion capture suit, so that's going to help us out as well, is you know how in MechWarrior 5 and MechWarrior Online, during the startup of each sequence, you see the player fiddling around with the buttons to start up everything. I want a little bit more of that, a little bit more interactivity within your environment. I want to see the player sort of react because, like in lore with these mechs, when you get hot, you're basically cooking inside there. So I want to see the player sort of interact with something like that, just to give it some more personality rather than just you're in a mech. That's about it. Have fun.
Switch to active. You reach up, you hit a
Yeah.
toggle. Passive, like, oh shit, override. You stamp a a button or
Yeah,
stuff like
the
that.
biggest thing I wanted to do, for instance, with especially with ejecting, I'm sure you saw the original MechWarrior 5 trailer where when
Back
he
in the
was
day.
getting
Yeah.
beaten down by the Atlas, and he's like, "Oh shit, pulling out." And I want to do something like that where you see your character reach for that damn thing and
Yeah.
pull for his life.
I was
And
We all remember
disappointed.
that trailer.
Yeah, like I think we've all recently, especially Mech 5, I'm like, man, that one sequence, it's like, and you can hear that, and he's like, oh shit, and yeah, smoke and cacophony, and it sort of fits too because you guys have a unique game where you can eject, and then you could run around as you're in your suit, if you will. But yeah, so
Yeah,
that'd
well,
be
there's a lot of potential there because in Living Legends, we have those big nuclear explosions and we have ejecting, so it's perfect, right?
yeah. So funny. I don't know if you listen. I had a podcast with Stackpole about that, and we talked about stack polling, and of course, it's always a unique thing, and Mech 5 has it, but sort of, it's not every single time, as well, and with the reactive going critical, but so obviously this sounds great. I've seen some images on your guys' Discord. You have some environmental and map designers and already sort of diving in. Can you talk about sort of the worlds we're gonna see? Are you guys gonna harken back to the original and do stuff? Or are you guys gonna create your own sort of a look? Because you guys in Living Legends had some pretty drastic biomes. I mean, you had from pyramids to jungle and to lunar landscapes. So what were you guys sort of thinking in that regard?
Well, our first set of maps that we have planned are either remakes directly or reimaginings of maps and locations from the first game. So we've got a remake of the iconic Inferno planned, which is a sort of inhospitable volcanic planet. We've got a remake of Extremity planned, which is the another iconic map, the purple low gravity tiny spinning asteroid with the rapid day and night cycle. Um, and let me think.
What about Thunder
A
Rift?
remake of a community edition map called Tukid, which is a location that I'm sure we're all familiar with. Um, and yes, Thunder Rift will definitely make a return. It's one of the most beloved maps from the first game. I'm sure fans of BattleTech stories know all about the lore behind that one.
Yeah.
But it's basically a tiny cave
It's
system
pretty big.
where, well, in Living Legends, it's a small enclosed map in a cave system that reliably produces gigantic, amazing brawls.
Yeah. I
So
yeah. Like I said,
we'll
I've
definitely be seeing a return of a lot of those favorites, and we're hoping that we'll have a lot more diversity in the biomes this time around because we won't be restricted to reusing textures from Crisis, which meant a lot of sand and a lot of jungles and a lot of sand and a lot more sand.
The cool thing about UE5 is Quixel Bridge is built into it, so we have access to the entire Quixel Megascans library right off the bat. So it will allow us to get a really good diversity for our biomes.
So you could literally grab stuff that, yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, cities, everything. Okay. Understood. Let's talk about scale in that regard. Obviously, that you were talking about, you don't know exactly right now how big of matches as far as people and servers. That's stuff that you guys will have to figure out. Scale of the maps, what sort of size are we talking about? And also, scale of the maps, I also want to bring up scale of the battle mechs, because that's actually another thing that I feel like, again, MWO and Mech 5, we even had Navid. We've talked about his reloaded mod because scale seems it has a negative effect on gameplay too, as far as mechs and pinpoint accuracy and so forth and so on. I didn't know what you guys with Anthony Scroggins. They have a linear scale, but it's pretty good as far as across the board. Like there is a difference between an assault and a light, but it's not like this, like huge in MWO. Just wanted to sort of that's an aesthetic question from the mechs, but then also scale of the maps. What are you guys thinking?
Well, we have this one developer who is obsessed with the scale of the mechs being correct, and I don't mean that in a negative way. That's just an observation. He's posting these screenshots where he loads up the models from Mechwarrior 5 or Mechwarrior Online, and he has these references
Sure.
with the heights marked and everything. And he's like, "I've got the canonical height of the Banshee here," and and so we definitely have people who are very keyed into that, and that is something that we're looking at being very intentional about, making sure that the scale is consistent not only between mechs, but between the mechs and the environment. In terms of the gameplay, like you'll need cover to be behind, and buildings, making sure that buildings are serviceable for the scale of the action, but not unrealistically huge, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll definitely be going for a more traditional sense of scale compared to PGI games, where, like you said, I think my personal opinion, I don't want to lose any fans here. I'm not trying to knock anyone's work. My personal opinion is that the scale is a little too exaggerated, where like a commando barely comes up to the crotch of the Atlas, for example. And you have when we load it into the editor, we can see the Atlas is like over 20 meters tall or something. And we're basically the square cube law is a cruel mistress. It turns out if you increase the size of a thing, it gets a lot heavier much faster than you would think.
Yeah.
And if you actually try to calculate it, an Atlas is buoyant. It turns out it floats on water because it's so huge.
Yeah. Well, you
so
get in
maybe.
Yeah, you get in weird things when you talk about scale. I mainly bring it up just from a gameplay perspective because I think really that's all you have to do. Because again, I've said this time and time again. I can show you one M1A1 right next to the other. One weighs 50 tons, one weighs 70 tons. You wouldn't know it's an armor package, and you wouldn't know from the outside. So, but just from a gameplay perspective, it has a big impact in MWO. And it's funny, even HBS had a weird. I don't know if you caught this, but like in all their cinematics, mechs are fucking like Pacific Rim sized. Like I never understood in all of their imagery why mechs were that big, other than just like I guess I don't know. I actually don't know why they chose that direction. But for those that are listening out there, per lore, and also like again, even just per lore, they're actually not that big. Like they're not supposed to be literally 40 stories tall or whatever some of these mechs were. They're gigantic. I mean, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, by the way, go and look at that Griffin or look at that Atlas standing behind a podium at depth as well, and they're massive. They're not supposed to be like that. So animations, you guys are going to be doing your own animations. Just wanted to ask you about them. Are you going more of a kinesiology? Are you going more of a robot? Like what are you guys? Are you taking past games for what are you guys doing in that realm?
In terms of animation, so of course it varies by the assets. For human assets, I have the motion capture suit, so we'll be doing motion capture animations for most of the player characters. For mechs itself, I'm not much of an animator, and we're unfortunately lacking quite a few animators, so we're having to take quite a few liberties with the animation style. I want the mechs to, of course, feel weighty, but look like they can move with the purpose. We're taking advantage of the newer tech that UE5 has. They have a tool called Control Rig, which allows us to do real-time inverse kinematics. So one of the things that I don't know if it's changed or fixed. But in Mechwarrior 5, the feet for the mechs when you're standing still on uneven terrain, they don't exactly quite match up to where your position actually is. So that's one thing we can easily fix with this. Other than that, it's kind of up in the air due to my lack of experience.
Yeah, I know with MWO, the reason why they didn't have it is because you could have some weird shit as far as hitboxes, where the foot was knee joint and hip and so forth if you add it up. Because I remember Mechwarrior 3 had IK, and I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, you remember, like, again, it was quite the
Yeah.
torso. Yeah, it was different, but then you also have to worry about hitboxes and gameplay experience. So if there's an animator out there that is interested, should they join your Discord? Should they hit you up?
Please, for the love of God, yes, because we really need them.
So there you go, recruitment tool right here. So, and again, we'll have that Discord information down below. Speaking of your guys' team, you're all volunteers. You guys mentioned that. How many people do you guys have? And what's you mentioned animation. You're lacking in that department. Is there any other fields that like you could really use help, or is there what's your status?
So for we actually, thanks to a lot of the influx of people coming into the server, we do have a lot of talent for most of the teams. Animators is the one thing that we are lacking, and of course, programmers. We need more programmers to help us out because we have, I think, at most 4 programmers for the team, and since it's entirely volunteer base, everybody's got their own schedules and their own life to work on, so it's a little hard matching up schedules to try and get stuff done. In total, we have about 67 members on the team. About 8 of those are people who are from other projects, but who are helping us out by providing us either technical know-how or providing us temporary assets to use. We're using the mechs as a temporary stopgap from wolves, and one of the guys, IQ Fish from the Hired Steel animations, he wanted us to use his harasser model in game, so we're using that. It's really good, high quality model, and it's also nanite, so there's that as well. um uh I mean, we'll never say no to talent. You never, like, if somebody's good at something, like, put them to work.
Gotcha. Awesome.
Yeah, it's hard to keep an exact count ever since we had this massive influx of interest with our pre-alpha release and our public announcement many moons ago. Uh, but I would say the core group of people who are pushing the project ahead on the day-to-day basis is, I would say, about 15 individuals. Did you see how it's reasonable, Nene?
Yeah, roughly around there.
And the total size of the team, people who aren't just consultants and aren't just occasional collaborators, is probably closer to about 35, I would say.
Okay.
Maybe 40. But people's availability varies a lot. People will disappear for a month or two and then come back and do a ton of work.
Yep, I know how that is. Looking at you, Tori, for Mech Commander. He's our golden child. So without him, nothing happens. So I totally understand. And you got some balancing, obviously, but that's something that you guys just have to deal with as a not even a mod team really anymore, but just as a independent fan development team.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we are actually a registered studio by the state of California, so we are official.
Okay, there you go. Obviously, this is really exciting. I wanted to sit down with you guys. Do you have a website, by the way, to where someone can just go to, or is it just Discord right now?
It's just the Discord at the moment. We're still trying to get the groundwork laid for a lot of this stuff. I haven't had the time to really work on getting a website up and running, because if I take time away to do a website, then nothing's getting done for the game. And at the moment, the game is the highest priority, because if we don't have a game, then there's nothing to show anyways.
Gotcha. I was just wondering where people could go for updates, and so that's just Discord. That's the
the Discord's the best place right now.
Yeah.
Hey, 2 areas we could definitely use help to circle back to that last question.
Sure.
If you have experience and time and motivation in managing professional social media accounts and building websites, we need help with both of those things, because we have people that could do them, but they should be building the game instead, like Nene just said. So.
Yeah.
Uh,
We also have a Twitter account, and I've been kind of having to do that myself as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, this is super exciting. You know, before I don't want to like leave anything out there. Is there, I mean, we've talked pretty much about everything as far as mechs and tanks and all that. That's all a good gameplay. Obviously, you guys got a lot of work ahead of you, so I know you can't commit to anything right now because that's the whole point. Is you got to figure stuff out as you move along. You know, is there anything that you would like to get out there to the world, if you will, if someone's listening? Is there something that we've missed or you had on your mind, or if there was something that you guys wanted to talk about specifically, you know, feel free to, you know, bring it up.
I think at the moment, the biggest thing is, of course, trying to get as much fan response and getting the information out there to as many people as possible. Because I mean, Living Legends, when it originally went down, it never really fully recovered from that, and I feel like this is our second chance to get Living Legends out there. And since it's going to be on modern hardware, it's going to be more accessible to a lot more people. I feel like just having a good following and a good number of people actually play the game would that's more than enough for me.
What about you?
yep. For my part, just look out for more announcements. Join our Discord. Keep an eye on our social media, what little we have. And if you are interested to know more about what this game will be like, you should check out the first one because we still play it pretty much every day. There's active public games starting at about 5 to 6 p.m. US Eastern Time every day. There's public events on the weekends, which are basically the same as public games, but everybody's in TeamSpeak. Um, and if you're interested in that, hop in the Mechwarrior Living Legends 1 Discord, and I'll see you there.
Awesome. Well, Nene and Liko, thank you guys so much for sitting down. Like I said, this was we were supposed to do this last week. You got sick and then I got sick, and yeah, I'm still dealing with it, and I hope you're 100% trying to
Likewise.
trying to get there. Still haven't worked out. That's yeah, but we're getting there. It's fantastic. Like I said, I saw the response because I know there's a lot of negativity out there with people, and as far as regarding you know, PGI, but really you know, like regardless of how you feel, I feel like I'm bummed that you know, there wasn't better communication with you know, PGI or EG7 or whoever now, as far as really trying to keep you guys under the hood as far as Mech 5, because I feel like that's a good PR thing too, right? I mean, like, you know, it was on there, you know, the what is it? The big you know what I'm talking about? The game thing. We're just watching it a few
E3?
weeks. E3, thank you. E3, yeah. Words. I was like something. E3. So, you know, and it's a bummer that they couldn't keep you guys attached, because
Yeah.
I do feel like it's a loss there. And, you know, like it is sort of disheartening hearing that there wasn't better communication, especially with like modders, and because, you know, we're doing Mech Commander Mercenaries, and we're a handful of people, so we're not splitting. And I know some people have asked that. No, hell no. And also the framework for what we're doing aligns basically what they're already established. Like we're not reinventing the wheel. We're not redoing our animations. We're not redoing the heat. We're not, you know, changing the weapon systems. We're not messing. We're, you know, and so a lot of that fits, and then plus some of the DLC stuff. And from a modder's perspective, this is sort of why I was curious, was it's like doing 90%, 90+% of the work for you. But if you're drastically changing that, then it doesn't really do anything for you if it's hampering. So that's a bummer that, you know, there wasn't communication. But on the other hand, I'm excited for you guys because you do have the freedom. But with that freedom, I will say good luck. I hope we can have another conversation in 6 months or a year or whatever, and you know, really see this project. So good luck with that. Honestly, truly. I've talked about Living Legends game mode. I still think it would be a fantastic alternative to faction play. But if we're not going to get it in MWO, we'll get it through you guys, and we'll be playing the shit out of it. So yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I feel Living Legends 2 sort of fits that little niche of like, because we have BattleTech, so there's your turn-based games. Then you got Mechwarrior 5, so there's your single player with Mech Bay and everything. Then you have your Mechwarrior Online, so customization and like matchmaking stuff like that. Then Living Legends fits that all-encompassing combined arms warfare niche.
Yeah, 100%. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for being on here. I'll have all of your information down below. And of course, if you guys have any questions for these two or the other devs, hop on their Discord, be part of their community. And yeah, I look forward to us sitting down again in a few months and doing this again. So thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks for giving us a signal boost.
Yeah, not a problem.
You have a good one.